everyone who is in attendance today. Really appreciate you all taking your time to come and listen to Kenneth McCoy. My name is Melissa, and I'm thrilled to introduce Kenneth McCoy, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Providence, Alaska. I hope I got that right. Today, Ken will share his leadership journey, professional insights in his current role, and his experiences during his 27-year tenure with the Anchorage Police Department. So our group, Ken, is now called IDEAL, stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Empowerment, Accessibility, and Learning. And previously we were WLEAD, which had more of a focus on women in leadership development, but now we're bringing it around full circle, and we would like to have a broader group of diversity and inclusivity in our group. Our new mission statement is to create, nurture, and sustain an inclusive culture where differences drive innovation and empathy drives connection. So that is our brand new mission statement, fresh off the press. And with that, I'd like to welcome Kenneth McCoy.
Great. Well, thank you, Melissa. So good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Ken McCoy, and it's definitely an honor to be here with you today. I'm a recently retired chief of police, and now I serve as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Providence, Alaska. And so I had the privilege of serving the citizens of Anchorage for the last 27 years. And over the course of my career, my greatest sense of accomplishment and pride came from helping to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. So when I retired, the most important thing for me was to continue making an impact in the community. And my role as the Chief DEI Officer at Providence allows me to do just that. I can continue building relationships and addressing concerns. However, my focus will now be related to health equity, issues such as equal access to treatments and affordability. I will also work towards building a more diverse and inclusive environment at Providence for the more than 5,000 caregivers. So one may not see how the role of chief of police and diversity, equity, and inclusion are aligned. And it truly depends on the person. So, as I reflected on my upbringing and my career, it became clear to me how the role of chief of police and chief DEI officer are aligned. So, today I would like to share with you my leadership journey, a journey that truly defines who I am. So, next slide, please. So, my story begins in Portsmouth, Virginia, where I was born and raised. I was the oldest of four boys. We lived with both of our parents. However, most of my memories are with my mother and grandmother, two very, very strong women. Their supportive presence was ever guiding, encouraging, and loving. As a young boy, my relationship with my father was distant and disconnected. It was not until recently that we reconciled and attempted to develop a meaningful relationship. Unfortunately, he passed away before we could fully make up for lost time. During my childhood, Portsmouth was quite segregated. Our neighborhood, our schools, our churches, I was African American, and everything about my environment reinforced it. I remember the many conversations with my grandmother where she candidly told me that if I were to ever succeed as a Black man in America, I was going to have to work twice as hard as my white counterparts. And even after putting in the extra work, there were no guarantees of success. The odds were against me. Although the message was sobering and unforgettable, she always followed it up with an abundance of encouragement and a prediction that I would achieve greatness. Her words of encouragement have always been a driving force for me. My father served in the military during the Vietnam era, and he got out of the active service shortly after I was born. Although my father failed to make a meaningful connection with me, he wanted the best for our family. So, to improve our financial situation and quality of life, he made the decision to reenlist into the military when I was about 12 years old. His first assignment relocated our family from Virginia to Germany. So this photo here is a photograph of my family, my mother and father, Kenneth and Patsy, and then me and my three younger brothers. So I'm the oldest in the photo, and then we have Kirk, Keith, and Kevin. So next slide, please. So you must imagine me, a 12-year-old black kid who has only ever known Portsmouth, Virginia. All of my friends, schoolmates, and neighbors were black. Now I've been dropped into Europe, and as fate would have it, there was no U.S. military base housing available to us. So we had to live in a small German community in the town of Kaiserslautern, Germany, which in retrospect was the best thing that ever happened to me. So here I was, way outside my comfort zone. No one looked like us. We didn't speak the language. How is this going to go? So I remember playing catch outside with my brother, and it didn't take long for the German kids to notice us and become curious about who we were and this strange ball that we tossed back and forth. It was an American football. And so it began. As only kids can do, we found common ground and friendship. I learned to accept people from different backgrounds and culture, people who didn't look like me, and they learned to accept me. It was a early but important lesson in my development. We are more than our outward appearances or language. We have more similarities than differences. Next slide. So, after 3 years in Germany, my family transferred to Anchorage, Alaska, where we lived on Fort Richardson. I attended Bartlett High School. I immediately fell in love with Alaska and its welcoming feel. It seemed as if everyone I met was from someplace else, and we were all coming together to make Alaska, more specifically Anchorage, what it is, a incredibly diverse community. I thrived in this setting, easily making friends from all walks of life, different backgrounds, cultures. I was that kid who participated in just about every activity imaginable. I played football. I was in the band. I ran track and field. I participated in JROTC. And I even dabbled a little bit in student government, an activity that led me to take part in a program called Boys State and to be selected to represent Alaska at Boys Nation, where I had the honor of meeting President Reagan in 1987. And just to keep my presentation politically balanced, I met President Obama in 2015. So just like to keep things balanced there for you. So during this period of my life, I learned many lessons on teamwork, leadership, and acceptance. It became very apparent to me that I possessed an ability to interact and move seamlessly amongst different groups of people and activities. I was able to fit in with everyone, from the athletes to the band kids. I was even able to comfortably hang out and play Dungeons and Dragons at lunch with some kids from JROTC class. I inherently knew how to accept others and to allow myself to be accepted for who I was. It's a skill set that served me well. Next slide, please. After high school, I attended a small military college, the New Mexico Military Institute in Roswell, New Mexico. Here, I learned the core principles of leadership, discipline, and service. The school's motto of duty, honor, and achievement are core values that were instilled into us cadets and words that I've tried to live my life by. In addition to great academics, the school was also one of the few service academies with the early commissioning program, which meant I could receive a commission as a military officer in 2 years rather than the traditional four. So I was proudly commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army at 19 years old, an achievement that marvels me to say out loud. I returned to Alaska and served in the Alaska Army National Guard while continuing my education at the University of Alaska, Anchorage, where I studied justice. My time in the National Guard was very enlightening. As a young second lieutenant with command over soldiers, some of whom were old enough to be my father, was a very humbling experience, to say the least. At this time, I started practicing servant leadership before it was called that. I focused on promoting the well being of my subordinates while providing them with the necessary resources and training to be successful. I learned that just because I wore the rank or held the title, it didn't make me the most knowledgeable or respected. My success was dependent upon surrounding myself with talented people, taking care of them, and allowing them to shine. As they shined, I shined and earned their respect. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that holding your people accountable is part of taking care of them. I embraced this leadership style, and I went on to serve 10 years in the National Guard, honorably discharging at the rank of captain. So this photograph here is a photo of the New Mexico Military Institute campus, which, again, in my opinion, is a very beautiful institution and a place that really defined me. It's in Roswell, New Mexico. Next slide. In 1994, I decided to join the Anchorage Police Department. As a young boy, I was fascinated and desired to be a police officer. Being able to serve and protect others was more than just a slogan to me. I genuinely wanted to make a difference in my community. The process to join the Anchorage Police Department was quite competitive. We started out with 1,600 applicants taking the initial written examination at the Egan Convention Center in Anchorage. That number dwindled with every step of the process, which included a physical ability test, a medical screening, a background investigation, a polygraph examination. At the conclusion of that process, they hired 28 of us. So together, we entered the 16-week police academy. The academy was both physically and academically challenging. The firearms instruction was intense, and I was not the best shot. And so this portion of the academy brought me much stress. However, with extra work and help from my academy mates, I passed the firearms course. This theme continued throughout our academy, where we pulled together to help one another. And as you can imagine, this created some really strong bonds between us. I recall, and I'm often reminded about this when I see my academy mates, that our instructors asked each of us to write our own obituary and share it with the class. This was an exercise to illustrate how we would face inherent danger as law enforcement officers. So my obituary summarized that I passed away many, many years after serving as the department's chief of police. So as you can imagine, the teasing I received from my academy mates for making such a bold statement. So after graduating the academy, I started my career in law enforcement, like most officers do, as a uniformed patrol officer working in our neighborhoods. If done correctly, this level of law enforcement can be extremely effective and impactful. Officers who truly get to know the community and the citizens they serve are able to solve and impact crime, and they're able to really help improve lives. This is how I went about my duties as a patrol officer in Mountain View in the mid 1990s. This was a time of increased violence and gang activity in our city. So it's funny when I look back, it's not the gangs or the dangerous situations that I remember. What I remember is the lady in the neighborhood who baked cookies for us, or the kids who rode their bicycles alongside of us as we did bike patrols in the community. Those are the memories that I fondly hold. We humanized the badge while impacting major crime and violence. It was truly community policing, a model that I still believe in to this day. So, as a young officer, I marveled at the detectives showing up on the major crime scenes in their suits, ready to solve the case. I knew that was what I wanted to do. So, after several years as a uniform patrol officer, I applied to become a detective. I was selected and I started on a career defining journey in investigations. I was assigned to our special victims unit. I investigated cases of sexual assault, child abuse, and some homicides. Many of these cases were simply heartbreaking. The victims were often the most vulnerable in our community, and the suspects were some of the most depraved. I found true meaning in this work. I was helping people in their greatest time of need, and I felt the impact that I was making. This truly became my life's work. I received promotions and eventually took over command of all of our sex crime units, a position that allowed me to do even more good. I was content and, as I mentioned, found real meaning in the work that I was doing. But no story is without adversity. So around this time, the chief of police and the command staff decided to reorganize the police department. Part of the reorganization eliminated one of our detective units, the detective intelligence unit. And this decision created a situation where there were more detective supervisors than units available. So union bumping rules came into play. At about the time, I had about 12 years of experience, and I was a highly regarded detective, both internally and externally with our community stakeholders. However, I was the junior supervisor. So I was bumped from my position in sex crimes and forced to go back to patrol as a uniformed supervisor. So I can tell you, I was devastated by this decision. All of my accomplishments and work were disregarded in exchange for a procedural union rule. This had to be the lowest point in my career. I seriously considered leaving the police department, leaving law enforcement. If it weren't for the support and encouragement of my family, I would not have gotten through it. It was really a tough time for me. And it took every ounce of strength to put on the uniform each day and to go to work. I would keep a professional face. I would do the best job I could. And then I would return home and then rinse and repeat the next day. During this time, I prayed and I prayed for answers. And I finally saw my path. I made the decision that if I were going to be on patrol, I was going to be the absolute best uniformed officer or supervisor, which meant I had to embrace and pursue greater responsibility in that role. And it was in this moment that I decided to really push myself. Over the next several years, I studied and competed for promotions. My efforts and determination paid off, earning me promotions to lieutenant, captain, and eventually deputy chief of police. This period of adversity set me on an entirely different path. Fortunately, I was able to channel my mixed feelings of anger, disappointment, sadness into an overwhelming force of motivation and positivity. I see how I found inspiration and encouragement in my work as I slowly climbed the ladder. At every level, I envisioned myself at the next level, and I conducted myself as if I were already in that role. This gave me purpose, it made my performance stand out, and it prepared me for the next challenge and the next opportunity. I loved my role as deputy chief of police, which placed me as second command of our 600-person police department. As deputy chief, I was the ultimate partner and teammate to our chief at the time, Justin Dahl. I supported him 100%, I gave him my best effort every day, carrying out his mandate and vision. However, at the same time, I utilized this opportunity to develop my own executive leadership skills, preparing myself to be the next chief of police. I started by building relationships with community stakeholders from other agencies, with political leaders, and I found that the partnerships I developed were more valuable than any other aspect of my job or career. Those partnerships continue to serve me to this day. And as I look back, those were really the largest building blocks in my success is having partners. I served as the deputy chief for 4 years. In 2021, Chief Dahl retired, and the opportunity that I had been waiting for presented itself. In April of 2021, I was appointed to acting chief of police. And in July of 2021, I was confirmed as the first African American chief of police in the 100-year history of the Anchorage Police Department. As chief, I prioritize maintaining a strong relationship with the community while supporting the men and women of the department, which was a delicate dance, especially during the last couple of years where we experienced civil unrest and political divisiveness and a pandemic. I retired from the Anchorage Police Department in February of 2022 after 27 years of service, a journey that took a young boy from Portsmouth, Virginia, all the way to becoming the chief of police in Anchorage, Alaska. Every step of that journey, the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, made me who I am today. The lessons I learned form my leadership style. It is now that I see how the journey truly defines who we are. Over the course of my career, I prioritize building inclusive environments, mentoring and advocating for others, and bringing people together. These are the skills and attributes that I developed and refined throughout my childhood and early adult life. These are the skills and experience that I bring to Providence, Alaska, as its first Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Next slide. When I retired from APD, I was not sure what was next. I just knew whatever it was had to have meaning and had to allow me the opportunity to continue making an impact in our community. The opportunity at Providence is just that. So, why is diversity, equity, and inclusion important? So, let's start with diversity. We all bring different perspectives and experiences to our organizations. When we embrace those differences and come together, we can make magic. Many studies have shown that diverse teams can increase innovation and performance. So representation is important, and that diversity must be present throughout all levels of our organizations. To achieve this, we must develop and mentor our underrepresented employees and offer real opportunities for them to compete for advancement. We also need to show our young people, especially those of color, that they are welcome and needed in business, tech, education, and the healthcare industries. When young people see diverse representation in our organizations, it can inspire and open the realm of possibilities for them. Equity is about providing the necessary resources or opportunities to help one be the best version of themselves or to help a group elevate their situation. At Providence, my external focus will be on health equity. Adverse health conditions, due to a variety of reasons, impact our minority communities at alarming rates. I intend to collaborate closely with those underserved communities to identify and address these issues to help improve access to healthcare, affordability, and treatment, which will lead to better outcomes. And inclusion is the most important aspect of my role, in my opinion. We must create work environments where everyone feels welcomed and valued. If we fail to do so, we will see underperformance, employee dissatisfaction, and high rates of turnover. It all starts with the commitment from the top. Our executives and leaders set the tone, leading by example, holding the organization accountable. And we all benefit from an inclusive environment. Next slide. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share my journey and vision with you. We all have our story and our experiences that serve as building blocks of who we are. If we embrace our journey and lean into our strengths, we can achieve our maximum potential. So it's been an honor to be here with you today, and I would really love to have more engagement with you and answer any questions you may have on anything I touched on regarding my upbringing and my career and what I intend to do next.
Hi, Chief McCoy. Um, this is Bianca. Is it okay to call you Chief McCoy?
Sure, you can call me Chief McCoy, you can call me Ken, whatever you're comfortable with.
So yes, thank you so much for sharing your story. You had you have four male siblings in your family. Um, so it seems like you definitely followed your grandmother's advice. Um, and I'm really curious, what type of journeys have your brothers been on, and how has it helped you to see their journey and also to know that they've been witnessing your journey as well?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so again, we're four boys, 3 years apart from each other. And we were close. We were really close growing up and very competitive also. And so it's very interesting how all of us, took different paths to where we are today. And I'll start by saying all of my brothers are doing well, but the journey wasn't always as smooth. And so I'll go through the list here. So my brother Kirk, he's 3 years younger than I, and he's had a tough time. Um, he was always in my shadow, and really, I could tell looking back, he struggled with that, and he always really had to strive hard to, um, get out of that shadow. And this took him down some different paths. He oftentimes chose the opposite direction that I went, and this got him into some trouble. And he ended up getting involved in with drugs and ended up having to go to prison for some time. But he's served his time. He's gotten out, and he's really worked hard to be a good father to his children, and to really get his life on track. And all my brothers, we have moved across the country, but Kirk, he's remained in Virginia, and I'm thankful for that because he's the closest to my mother and my grandmother, and he is always there for them and has truly a kind heart and spirit. And so I'm just very thankful for him, the journey he's been on, and the position he's in right now to help our family. My brother Keith, he's the artistic one in the family, and he went to college and he was studying theater. And we used to tease him, and it was like, well, what are you going to do with a theater degree? Are you going to be serving popcorn at the theater, the movie theater? So we really would tease him, but he followed his passion, and he's been acting gosh, for the last 20 years, on stage, different performances. He's come to Alaska several times to perform with the I believe it's the Perseverance Theater out of Juneau. He has signed contracts with them. He's been to Alaska and performed in A Raisin in the Sun, Sweeney Todd, To Kill a Mockingbird. He's just really done fantastic for himself. And so, as I mentioned, he's done that for like the last 20 years, and he's recently accepted a role as a director in a company in Atlanta, Georgia. And so it's funny, he's been, traveling his whole adult life, and he's for the first time he's has his own uh, condo. He's finally bought a car because he's just been on the road his whole life. So he's doing great and just living out his passion. And then my youngest brother, Kevin, he joined the Air Force. He served several years in the Air Force, and he recently got out and relocated to Texas with his family. And he's living in Texas. He still serves in the Air Force Reserve, and he's working for UPS. So doing well, and so that's a little bit about my brothers. And I can tell you, being the oldest, that was really my first experience in with leadership. Really having to, work with my brothers and keep them on track as best I could from a very young age.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Thanks.
You're the classic oldest sibling, by the way.
Am I?
You fit the archetype for sure. Looks like there's a question in the chat from our friend Laura. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone looking to be in law enforcement?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Uh, we ask so much of our men and women in law enforcement. It's a very challenging job with many demands, and we expect perfection from them, and we know we're not perfect. And for someone that's looking to go in law enforcement, and I get this question quite often. Young people ask, well, so what do I have to do if I want to be a police officer? Do I have to train, do a bunch of push-ups? Do I have to be able to shoot? Do I have to, study criminal justice? And my answer to them is, what we need are good people. We just need good people with a good heart who want to do the right thing for their community. We can teach you everything you need to know, but what we can't teach you is the values of compassion, integrity, for having the heart of service. Those are things we can't teach, and those are the people we're looking for. Just good people. And all the skills that come along with being a police officer, we can train you on that. But good people are needed to serve our community, and that's what it's all about. When we have police departments across our country that look like our community, that are truly there to serve, is when we're going to, get to a place where we have the level of trust that we want in law enforcement, and that we see them carrying out their duties in a manner that all of us can be proud of. That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about your team at Providence and the kind of initiatives that you're moving forward in your new role?
Yeah, so here at Providence, I'm on our executive team. I'm a member of the executive team, and I report directly to the CEO, Preston Simmons, which really is encouraging because, as I mentioned, if any organization wants to have, really a true uh, effort towards diversity and inclusion, it has to start at the top. And there's been a real commitment from Providence, and having me report directly to the CEO, is part of that. It shows that commitment. And so part of what I've done since I've been here about 90 days now, is first and foremost, I really wanted to get out and to meet and hear what our caregivers have experienced. And so that's what I've spent the first 90 days doing, is really just meeting and greeting our caregivers throughout the state. I took part in a listening session in Kodiak, Valdez, Seward, and here in Anchorage, where I truly listened and really got to hear what our caregivers have experienced and what their thoughts are on our organization. And my takeaway is Providence is an amazing organization. And however, there's always room for improvement. And that's where I look to lean in, and especially on the inclusion aspect of it. Making everyone feel welcomed and valued is very important. I've also had the opportunity to have many conversations with the community on a variety of issues, and that's another area of focus for me, is meeting externally with our different stakeholders and community members to understand what some of the barriers are to healthcare and access, and also recruiting. Getting people into our organization. So those are internally and externally a couple of areas I will be focusing on: inclusion internally, health equity externally, and here in the next coming months, we'll be developing different strategies to help improve upon that. Training, different meetings and conversations. But one thing about commitment, um, uh, our organization have what we call caregiver resource groups. In other organizations, they may just be referred to as employee resource groups, but they allow a space for employees of similar demographics to come together to really share experiences and to help mentor and assist one another. And right now at Providence, we here at Providence, Alaska, we have 3 that have already been stood up. We have a Black caregiver resource group, a Latinx resource group, and an LGBTQ group. And again, I've been able to meet with all of those groups, and it's just really a great space of positivity and support and encouragement. And the groups are not exclusive to those demographics. I say they're open to friends and allies, because that's what it takes to truly build an inclusive environment. But it says a lot about the organization to have the courage to have those groups already stood up and embedded in the organization. Some organizations you wouldn't be able to approach a concept like that. So it definitely says a lot about the commitment.
Looks like we have another question from our friend Heather in the chat. So she is wondering if the Chief DEI Officer role is a new one for Providence, and what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're facing in your new role?
Yeah, so great question. So Providence as a system has chief diversity officers in some of the other locations in Washington, Oregon, California. I'm the first for Alaska. And so from a system standpoint, I've been meeting with my colleagues from other states, and we're working on developing and rolling out a system-wide strategy for Providence as a system. However, each region is unique, and there will be some uniqueness to what we do here in Alaska. And so, as I mentioned, really my first step was getting to know our caregivers, getting to hear what their concerns are, getting to see what priorities are necessary here, and then to really begin the work. And I think the biggest challenge about this work is it's so large. It's so much to it, and it's, really, it's never ending. And so for me, the biggest challenge is going to be trying to identify and prioritize. Because again, my time here has gone so fast. My calendar is jam-packed, every day with meetings and conversations with different leaders and stakeholders throughout the organization. And it just tells me there's so much work to be done. And so really trying to prioritize that and move forward with the strategy is the biggest challenge. But although that's a challenge, I think it's an encouraging sign also that people are open, people are ready, for us to make some movement, and they're really excited about this role and what we're going to be able to do together. And so that inspires me. I just have to pace myself. I have to block time out on my calendar to check email from time to time. So it's good, but there's definitely a lot of work to do.
Sounds like your biggest challenge is the sheer volume of going after this exciting work.
It- Absolutely. I think that's, you hit it on the head. It's just the sheer volume of what we can do. And like I said, everyone is so excited about the role and the opportunities to really just engage and be better. And that inspires me and excites me. But there's just so much that we can
Yeah.
do, and that's just internally. Externally, I'm engaging with community members and different groups, and there's just such a need and desire, for this work right now.
It's a perfect segue into Jolene's comment or question rather in the chat. As community members, what can each person do to help in our community more? If you were going to give us some advice.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what I typically tell people is, when you're looking at DEI work wherever you are, it can feel overwhelming at times. And I just tell people, let's just take a step back and do what we can within the sphere of influence we have. If that's just connecting with one person and making them feel welcome and valued, then you've done your part to help move this to move the needle. And again, it can feel overwhelming to try to figure out, how am I going to help, change the world? How am I going to change attitudes, hearts and minds? And uh, you know, there's only so much we can do. And so if each of us, just take small steps, and it's a journey. This type of work is a journey for all of us. I know I'm learning daily. When I have conversations with people, I'm always learning, and I know I'll make mistakes, and we'll make mistakes, and we just try to be better, and that's what it's all about. It's about just trying to be better people ourselves, and trying to make the world a better place for others. And I think we all can, play a small role there. So thanks, Jolene, for that question.
So we shouldn't get into wars online on social media and say our way or the highway then.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. Yeah, just look away. Look away. Yeah.
No, yeah, move on.
Hmm.
All right, any other questions from the team?
Yeah, I have another question for you. So I probably in your work, everybody has a bad day. I can imagine that you might come up against some opposition and have kind of a tough day. How do you deal with your tough day? How do you take care of your own self to ensure that you can get back to it the next day and keep plugging along? How do you handle that?
Yeah, those are tough, and I've experienced them throughout my career. Those days where you just want to throw the towel in and give up, and it can be a challenge. And I oftentimes I've just had to get to that quiet place of reflection. And I know many times I've just had to give myself, that pep talk that I think we all do from time to time, reminding ourselves that, hey, we are good enough. We can do it. We just have to, keep pushing forward and not give up. And again, it's something that I have had to do numerous times. There are days I can recall where it just seemed like the world was against you, things aren't going right, and I remember telling myself, Ken, you're the chief of police. You get out there and you do it. And it's just finding motivation where we can. I as I mentioned, my family has always been such a big support network for me. To this day, my grandmother is still that person who, if I need a boost, give my grandmother a call, and she will definitely give me the encouragement I need to tackle whatever the problem is. And surrounding myself with family and supportive individuals is how I've been able to get through those tough times.
Thank you.
It's
It's
important
just
to have.
No, thank
encouraging,
you.
everybody does it. Everybody has it. And I think that's great advice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question.
All
Any
right.
other questions out there? I know I went through my presentation, so quickly, and when I look back, there's so many things that went into developing, who we are, and there's a couple of things that now I think about I didn't even touch on. The experience I had attending the FBI Academy, um, with law enforcement officers and commanders from around the world. And it kind of goes back to the partnerships. I talked about how important, partnerships are. And that was one thing that I really learned, and it was instilled in us, is the importance of those. And so one of my academy mates from the FBI Academy, you know, is from the Philippines, and she had a case she was working on, and they thought the suspect had fled the Philippines and was in Alaska. And so she knows me from our academy class, so she calls me and just asks, hey, if we think this person may be in Alaska, can we see if you can try to track them down for us? I'm just like, absolutely, no trouble at all. Give me what information you have. And they thought he was living on J Bear, actually. And so again, partnerships. I have a very close relationship with the security forces commander out on base, and I called him and it's like, hey, you mind doing this? And he's like, absolutely. So within 15 minutes, we had this guy in custody, and I called her back in the Philippines, and it's like, hey, we have him. And she was just floored. Didn't have the paperwork ready, didn't have anything. She had just reached out and called me, but it just again reinforced me the importance of partnerships and how much of a force multiplier it is in whatever we do. And so I always value, building those relationships and maintaining them throughout our organization, throughout our profession and with other key leaders and stakeholders from various professions across the community.
So it looks like you have a very nice compliment in the chat if you get a chance. I don't see a question there, but very kind words.
Oh, thank you, Donna. I really appreciate that. This is so humbling to be here, and I'll be honest, I really had to think about what I wanted to talk about. And for me, my story, when I look back and see, how I developed, those are for me is true building blocks as to who I am, and I wanted to share that. Um, but I just want everyone to know how humble and honored I am to have been afforded the opportunities to see what I've seen, to accomplish what I've accomplished, and I didn't do it, by myself. I had help along the way at every stage, and I'm just so appreciative of that, and I'm just thankful to be able to share that story, and I hope it came across that way. Because I am appreciative.
Thank you so much. I have to ask, looking ahead to 2023, would you be willing to come back and share with us the year and how it went for you, your first year?
Yeah, I would love to. And like I said, it's a really exciting time right now, just seeing it all, start up. And I really would love to come back and share with you how it all came together and what we're up to.
Maybe a little inspiration can be shared with the team as we're trying to do new things as well. So
Absolutely.
you're right. It does take a team. Everybody on the ideal team is so supportive, and I see it almost every day, just how it's a real group effort. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Any other questions before we thank our speaker? Okay. Well, it looks like we have a few extra minutes before we have our 1 o'clock meetings. Ken, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, I know
much.
it took a little bit to get us connected and coordinated. I know we had originally planned this when I was still with the police department, but I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen.
For sure. Yeah, Melissa's very tenacious, and we were committed. We were going to have Ken McCoy come
Oh,
speak.
well,
So
thank you. Well, thank
best of
you.
luck.
I really appreciate it.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and sign off.
Okay.
And
Well,
let
thanks,
you go.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.